This is Talk Over Tea,
a place for a casual conversation about life in local government.
With Kassandra
and Claudel Frederic,
elected officials from the city of Amesbury, Massachusetts.
Relax with us for a moment. The tea is hot.
We're back for another episode.
Welcome to Talk Over Tea.
Yeah.
Hey, Claudel.
How you doing?
Very good. Excited to be here today. We are going to talk about housing and the housing crisis.
Yes.
And there's a lot to talk about, so I feel like we should just dive right in.
Absolutely.
And, having been a realtor myself and now being in the position that I'm in, have sort of a, interesting perspective. I know you as a realtor have, sort of lived through this from your perspective too. So I think it's going to be interesting for people to hear from both of us.
Right.
My sort of framing of the housing crisis is that this is really, it's a production problem. This is how we got here. The data shows that from 1960 to 1990, we built, this is in Massachusetts where we built almost 900,000 new homes. And in the 30 years since then, we have built about half as many homes. So in the period of people living longer and healthier, being more independent, and our population growing, we have provided significantly less places for them to live. So overall, our approach to solving this has to be about building more homes, more
Absolutely.
choices. And so being a realtor and in the position of trying to, make those connections and give people a place to live, I'm curious what it's been like for you to sort of see this acknowledgement of a housing crisis come to fruition, I guess.
Right.
Yeah, over the last several years.
It's definitely, it's been a lot, especially, it's been very great to see a lot of young families want to purchase properties, to raise their own families and kind of work so hard to save their down payment, their closing costs and all that. And then they come to the point where you're submitting offers on multiple properties and sometimes it's not getting accepted.
Yeah.
For the simple fact of supply and demand.
Yeah.
Where basically the supply is not meeting the demand, so it's like one house, 10 people want it. Right now it's a little lower than that, but it's still a fight, you know what I mean? And it's been tough to kind of keep people encouraged.
Yeah.
And a lot of people still are going to chase that, but it's been kind of surreal to kind of see it happening.
Yeah.
It's tough.
I distinctly remember when I was still in real estate, a sort of senior owner at the agency I was with, it was a holiday party, actually. So it was like, everyone's feeling festive. It's the end of the year. And he got up to do his annual speech and just said, next year is going to be the toughest year ever. It was sort of like, this is the end. If you're not good enough, you're going to be out of business.
Yeah, absolutely.
I think we had all started to feel the inventory tighten. There wasn't as much activity and much available, but he just sort of got up and gave that like doom and gloom speech. Like, this is it. And it was maybe a little bit premature. I think we got through a few more years after that before we really felt what folks are feeling now. The inventory it's very low, and giving people choices is really hard.
It's really hard. And it's not just on the purchasing end. It's, people looking to rent too. It's really tough for them. You can't afford to buy, right?
Yeah.
And then on top of that, rent is super expensive because it's not like there's
more
tons
than
of
a
units.
Mortgage, right?
Rents are like more than a mortgage, you know what I mean? So it's really tough on them, and that continues to go up. And it's a battle.
Yeah.
It's literally a battle. So I think we have a big responsibility ahead of us in regards to making sure we provide or come to a solution where we could get more properties out there. You know what I mean?
Yeah, one of the things we talk about a lot is they call it filtering. And so, the most important thing for filtering to be able to happen is to have these choices, the diversity and sort of like options for housing is that, sort of a family moves into a big house and, raises their kids. And when the kids leave the house, they should be able to sell that home to the next family and sort of downsize or move into another property of choice. And and sort of move through the cycle of the housing inventory, right? Like that's called filtering. And right now, what's happened is that there's nowhere for that, those empty nesters. There's nowhere for them to go. Yeah. And I know you're seeing it. I know I see it. I even have family members doing it because they have nowhere to go. They're almost like moving into the first floor of the house. They've converted a living room into a bedroom. They sort of like sealed off the second floor. They don't want to pay for the heat, but they have to keep this big house. So their assets are sort of wrapped up in that. Their tax bill is probably too much for them to handle, but they have nowhere to go. And now that means that next family also can't buy that house.
Yeah.
So everyone's sort of in this log jam. So a lot of what we are working on as local officials and even at the state level is ways to increase vertical construction as quickly as possible with options. We have zoning in place. We've had zoning in place, and we see it in the data for the last 30 years that really favors single-family homes on large lots.
Yeah.
It's very exclusive. And we have to undo that. So, in Amesbury, we've been amending and rewriting our zoning.
Correct.
And there's a few different ways that we've done that, but we're trying to provide choices.
Right. I mean, like to your point, even the baby boomers, they definitely want the choice. They don't want to be in that big house anymore.
I know.
They want to definitely downgrade. You know what I mean? And sell it off to somebody else.
Low maintenance options, and they want to be able to socialize. There's so much research out there about sort of the loss of the front porch and the sort of options to socialize with your neighbors and how the isolation impacts of that. So
I love the nosy neighbors.
Oh, I love my neighborhood. We have I live on a dead end street, and a lot of us do have front porches, and so we do sort of have that sense of community. But we're really working hard to rebuild that. So some of the things we've done here in Amesbury, we can talk about that. Last year, late in December, we passed an ordinance to approve backyard cottages. Everyone knows them as ADUs or accessory dwelling units. So twofold, really good for the property owner who maybe is still in that big house and isn't going to leave, but has a shed or a garage or a carriage house and could actually get some income out of that property, and provide a nice, quaint, small place for someone else to downsize or get a starter place to live. So that's a really popular way that folks are sort of providing options and amending what they have for zoning to sort of provide more housing options.
And for builders, I think there's a point that people talk about building smaller homes. I think that would make a lot more sense. I know MBTA is not really talking about that, but smaller homes is what's needed. We don't need to build any more homes on 1 acre lots. You know what I mean? We don't need a 3,000 or even like a 2,500 square feet living space for a small family. A lot of people are literally just looking for a 2-bedroom.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Something tiny to get started. And we don't have much of that at all.
It is hard for builders to put in starter homes, and there's ways that communities are incentivizing sort of cottage courts and starter homes, and we're in Amesbury looking at locations where we could sort of incentivize that. You mentioned MBTA, so we'll talk about what that is. So MBTA Communities Act in Massachusetts was a mandate that came down from the state, and do you want to talk about what that's been like or what the requirements are? And thankfully, we just passed ours, so we are compliant and very excited about what it's going to do. So I don't know if you want to talk.
We adopted it,
yes.
right? But so that's law, right? So it's not. We didn't really have much of an option in that.
Yep, it's a requirement it's a requirement for Massachusetts communities served by the MBTA, the commuter rail, or adjacent communities. So in Amesbury, we don't have a train station, but we're next door to a community that does. And they actually had a calculation of how many units, new housing units, each of those communities need to zone for. So it's not a building mandate, but a zoning mandate. And it's zoning for by right multifamily high density housing. So we're talking about sort of single family and entry level, sort of starter homes. Yeah. And this is really like I want to say high rise. It's high rise to us, right? 2 and 3 story apartment buildings. So you get sort of both ends of the spectrum. And so there's lots of ways communities are approaching that, and we can dig into that a little bit. But I just want to, while we're talking about these sort of two ends of the spectrum, mention there's this missing middle housing, and there's great graphics out there that show that single family homes, bigger apartment buildings, and then there's this missing middle, which is like townhomes, cottage courts, row houses, things like that. And we are going to be able, with our new zoning, to do a little bit of both. I think we're really targeting that missing middle housing, which provides that low maintenance, sort of shared space, accessible, options, sort of again, it just provides variety, which I think it's so great.
That's
for
exactly
us.
what we need.
Yeah, so that's really exciting. But MBTA communities, for us, we did just pass our zoning overlay district, and it includes a few different areas of town. For us, it will be developed. We have developers with those properties under agreement. Our required amount of housing is 789 new units, which sounds like a crazy number. We have just over 7,000 households in our community now. And if you went back to the 2011 census and you sort of think about, if we're going to add 789 units, plus a few others, right? Say we're going to add 1,000. In that 15-year time span, that means we're expanding our households by like 27% in that 15 years. It's a lot.
Yeah.
So 789 units is it's a big jump for us.
Yeah.
And we, I feel confident saying in Amesbury, those will be built. Again, we have developers with properties under agreement, or they already own them, and we know they're going to build. But that's not the case for every community.
No. Some of it is just in theory for a lot of communities.
I thought you were going to say theater, which is also theater. So
it is theater.
Good description. A lot of them are zoning areas that are already developed. They're like their central core downtown, thinking, well, no one's ever going to tear it down and rebuild it. Or areas that are sort of undevelopable. So we're seeing all sorts of things out of this mandate from the state, and some people sort of checking the box. But the intent of it was that the need for increased production is really everyone's responsibility.
Yes, definitely. It's not one community could just do this. And it's going to so having builders and developers that are ready for this is great. But the fact that they are willing to work with us and we are willing to work with them makes it even better.
Yeah.
Right. So that way the local, like us, the city, we still kind of have control in some of the things that's happening as far as the development, right? Due to the communication, we get to keep some of the character of the city that we like, some to have communication about like some green spaces, open spaces, which is great because I think that's what a lot of people might be worried about. Like, oh no, they're taking all our green space, and they're just going to put up these buildings. That's not the case, you know what I mean? So just having that dialogue between developers and the city planners and, just everybody involved, it's huge.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, and the reality is we do have undeveloped space here that these developers were interested in and had under agreement and, we're looking at for housing. And I think, the sort of reality for us is that something was going to be built there. Now, not every community has that kind of space. We have enjoyed having that kind of open space, but something is going to be built there, and the importance for us of bringing in more people. Having more people live here, work here, sort of allowing our community to thrive in that way is so important. And there's certainly communities out there who are taking a different stance on MBTA communities, who are pushing back against it. And we did take the time to sort of reflect and say, well, if this was not a requirement, would we be doing this?
Right.
And the reality is, again, those developers were actually at the table before this mandate came down from the state, and we would have been considering rezoning anyway. Something was going to be built there. It's been zoned for development for a long time. It's not protected open space. We have a lot of protected open space. And so, it's, the reality was if something was going to go there, and if we want a thriving, growing community, we need people here.
Right.
We need to be willing to share our space and invite others here too. So I think it's going to be great, and it is something we've been able to do thoughtfully in coordination with the developers. We actually developed a plan book for the latest adoption, which does articulate our expectations for design and reflects a lot of community conversations that we had about what those sort of spaces could look like, the importance of sort of parklets, open areas, like you said, amenities and services, and there's sort of like boulevards, tree-lined streets, right? We want it to look like it's always been there, like it really will fit in.
So it kind of aligns with like what the master plan
is.
So that's a big deal. I love the fact that it's going to help with the economic development in the area. More people that could actually come and work locally and live locally. You know what I mean? It's like it's tough, even like salaries right now. Everything is a little tough right now, right? Yeah. But at least if you live local and your salary is a little lower, that makes a difference.
You save on commuting and things. Yeah, and certainly adding to our population and our traffic counts, it will spur more economic development, right? It will invigorate those things. And we just had a special guest in Amesbury. We had Chuck Marone here from Strong Towns. So shout out to Strong Towns. They have a podcast of their own, which is much more mature than ours. He has hundreds of episodes that Chuck does, but we walked through our downtown area and we're talking to him about the potential for adding more housing. And I think one of my biggest takeaways from that experience was that I've sort of underestimated how many people we need to have living in Amesbury to really support our business community and make them like really thriving businesses. Like how many people we need to add to our streets.
Specifically into our downtown?
Downtown. And I mean, obviously, if you only live a mile away, sort of like walkable and it's people who are going to go downtown. Also specifically living downtown, we really need to add a lot of people.
Yeah.
And it's sort of mind blowing. And I know people are, even if you're listening, you might be freaking out and, sort of panicking, but, we have to share our space if we want nice things.
Yeah. No, but the reality of it is we have to be growing. That's just the way of life, right? I mean, it would be great to just have things the way you're used to it, but that's not the reality. You know what I mean? What is it? If you're not growing, you're dying, right?
I say that a lot.
That's the truth, right? Like, so that's really what it is. So, that's what we have to continue focusing on things like that.
Yeah.
Of course, it's going to be scary. It's change.
Right.
Nobody's really ever ready for that type of change. You know what I mean? So I think the way we go about it is going to make a difference. The way we go about the change, because it's coming.
Yeah. I think one of the and I've been in rooms even recently where people said, I still haven't heard anyone talk about anything that's going to solve the housing crisis. And my sort of response is like, get in the ring, we're all trying really hard.
That's it.
And nothing happens overnight. But for the sake of people listening who maybe are in that boat that, you're carrying, you're really cost burdened by what you have going on at home, or you just can't find what you need. People really are working hard to provide more solutions and just provide more options for you. I'm also on a state level committee. I literally just got off a call with them and we're talking about some really bold concepts and ideas, things that just eliminate red tape and allow projects to move faster. We're talking about how we're very car and sort of vehicle oriented and how transportation and travel is so related to housing and jobs. And, what can we do in that regard? The requirements, incentives, sort of carrot versus stick, right? Like there's a lot of really smart people at the table. Those conversations bleed into, how lenders are evaluating projects. How easy is it for a developer to get money to build some of these projects? Sometimes it's really hard.
Right.
We've sort of built a lending system around single family homes. I remember being a realtor, I had clients looking for manufactured homes, for sort of mobile homes, and there was a flyer on the bulletin board in the back room that was like, that's the one company you can call if you need someone to lend on a mobile home. Like, call the 800 number in the back room. That was it.
Yeah.
You know, I don't even know if they're still around. You know, it's that whole system is built around single family homes. And so, you know, how do we sort of disrupt that system and the cost of materials and goods and labor and how that's all built in? And so those conversations are happening.
Good.
We've got those people at the table to say, this is not working. You know, the bonus payment's going to the wrong person. It's not helping our bottom line. It doesn't help with our financing. You know, we're really like in the weeds. I don't want to say the mud. Like, it's not pretty, but we're going to get there, you know? And so I just think it's important for people to hear that it's happening. I know it's, you know, probably not fast enough.
The battle is deep.
But it wasn't happening 5 years ago. You know, none of this was on the table.
I feel like the internet also have provided a big platform where a lot more people are just really interested in real estate and are looking at real estate as an investment. As an investment vehicle, right? So you're talking about people with really deep pockets as well. So now they're taking away from people that don't really have those deep pockets and turning around and renting to them at top dollar.
Right.
Like, until they start having a conscience, it's not. It's going to be tough. You know what I mean? So there's a big battle. There's a lot of moving parts here.
A lot of conversation about, you know, what's sort of permissible and the, you know, freedom for you know, commercial entities to buy housing and sort of gobble up properties, and then also about short-term rentals, Airbnbs and, you know, VRBOs and the impact they're having on you know, the stability of neighborhoods. And you know, that's another thing we've done locally is we've adopted a short-term rental policy, and you know, like, in the interest of protecting our housing stock for year-round housing, because it is so important to, you know, to protect that. And so there's a lot of things that we're doing. Again, maybe behind the scenes, maybe you don't see it. You know, like that short-term rental we've adopted to protect that housing stock. We've got the, you know, backyard cottages. We've got MBTA zoning is now in place. It includes 2 40R districts, which are smart growth districts. They allow for more density on a sort of smaller piece of the parcel, protects some open space. Again, sort of listening to folks in the area and what they feel is important. So we've adopted an amendment to one. We've added a new one. We've added this MBTA zoning. So we're really ramping up for housing production.
Basically
in
allowing
Amesbury.
Opportunities. Those are definitely big, you know, resolutions there. Like, you know what I mean?
Those are big changes.
It's happening. And it's great to not be on the side where we're fighting it, you know, because we're part of the solution. That's what it is.
Yeah.
That's good.
So a couple things still on my list. Those starter homes. We don't really call them tiny homes. They're not really tiny homes, but like some starter homes, sort of like cottage court type of things. We've got to get these things we've just approved, get those developers in the ground and going vertical. And some of those will take a sort of like caveat. Some of those will take years to build. Right? No one builds 400 units in 6 months. That's just,
it's going to be,
they're going to build it in phases.
More so like a community.
Yeah, it'll take them a while to build. So, you know, anybody's listening thinking, well, what about our schools? And the, you know, like, those people will come over time, those new students and those new people. But we've had some people talk specifically about wanting age-restricted housing, you know, over 55s. And I don't know if those are the right fit for us or not, but there's certainly, I think, a few more things we can do.
Right.
Our housing authority is really active, and that's a great model for folks who need that. So, we've done. I just was looking at what we've done in the last sort of year or two for rezoning to enable more housing, and it's they're done, they're passed, and now it's a matter of production. Zoning's in place, and I'm excited to see a lot more options for folks. And so, if you're out there and listening, and you're thinking. Maybe you're feeling a little hopeless. Like, it's been a tough road.
You'll get there.
We're going to welcome you to Amesbury really soon. As soon as we've got a place for you to be. So
definitely, it's looking promising. So that's great. You know, again, if it can't just be Amesbury doing this, obviously there's other communities around doing this. So it's going to be a huge help. there's been a huge influx of people coming into Amesbury.
Yeah.
And some of them are people that can't afford to be in other spots. And, they're like, wow, this is cute, and find out about Amesbury, right? We'll take them. But
Yeah. Oh my gosh, we absolutely welcome you to move to Amesbury and be here with us. We, Commonwealth, Massachusetts, has identified that we're hundreds of thousands of units short of what we need, right? So you've got a lot of people sort of living together, young adults still living at home, again, older adults needing to downsize and have no option. So, yes, we can. No one community, county, or region could do this alone. Everyone needs to help and add add to the housing stock. And I think for me, and this is something I articulate to the leadership at the State House often, is that we are on the New Hampshire border. And there's a lot of talk about out-migration, folks who are leaving Massachusetts and moving to New Hampshire. Some of them go farther away, but because we're a border community and we know people are moving to New Hampshire, I sort of feel like we are the last stop.
Yeah.
Like if they move to Amesbury, we have to keep them here, because if they get priced out of Amesbury, they're going to New Hampshire.
Yeah.
And so I feel really strongly about the amount of support that we need, about the services and the homes and what we can do here to really keep them in Massachusetts for the sake of economic development and for so many reasons. But I do feel a real responsibility and obligation to sort of to hold that sort of barrier of like, if we want them to stay in Massachusetts, we really need to think about what's happening in a place like Amesbury, because it is so easy for folks to hop the border. I was in real estate and I held a New Hampshire and a Massachusetts license because people don't think twice about it. I could go to Newton, New Hampshire, and I'm going to get more space and a bigger house, and I'm going to pay about the same. Their tax structure is different, but in the end, the way it hits my wallet, about the same.
Right.
So, I can still commute to work in Amesbury, and it's right down the street, and I'm going to shop and dine in Amesbury, no big deal. But again, those data and metrics for the Commonwealth really do matter. We don't want to lose young people, and we want them to live and work here. So,
and it's happening, so we want to stop that.
Yeah.
So it's really great to hear that the state is actively involved in kind of talking to local cities, and you know what I mean? Like, these conversations are happening, and it sounds like there's a lot of key players at the table.
Yeah, it's like priority number one.
Yeah, that's huge.
And I think there's a lot of local people involved too. I didn't talk about our housing trust, but our housing trust has funding available, and right now they're talking about a first-time home buyer down payment assistance type of program, again, to help keep young people in our community. So everyone's looking for theirs, sort of the way that they can help.
Right.
And if everyone chips in a little bit, then, we should be able to make a big difference.
That's the thing. At the end of the day, we definitely need more inventory. That's really what it is. I feel like it sounds like everybody's chipping in for the opportunities to take place, but we need the inventory.
Absolutely. Again, production issue. The housing crisis is a production issue. So when you hear about new developments, or you hear about zoning that's going to encourage development, keep your neighbors in mind. I guess that's the moral of the story, right?
That's it.
We're trying to make room for people to move here, and we've got to learn to share.
Play nice in the sandbox.
There you go.
That's it.
All right. Well, that was sort of like a whirlwind of conversation about housing, but hopefully people find that interesting and informative, and we'll wrap there. I could talk about housing for days, but I appreciate that conversation and the work that you are doing, with our office as the council to move all these initiatives forward. It's exciting. It's going to be a great, great few years in Amesbury. Yeah,
it's going to be great.
Yeah, awesome. Well, thanks, Claudel. Have a good afternoon, and
you as well.
For everybody listening, come back soon for another episode.
Talk over tea.
Cheers.